to come and join and share. Peter and I got to know each other through a Craigslist ad, as it turns out. A couple of years ago, we put up an ad for some Katahdin ram lambs we were selling. He was one of the buyers that came by, and we struck up a conversation and found out we had quite a lot in common. And Peter said, at the time, he said, we had maybe like 3 or 4 ewes, and we were kind of just restarting our herd. We had done shepherding for a little while already, but we were deciding to restart with the hair sheep, the Katahdin variety, and doing rotational grazing and these kinds of things. So we were kind of culling and restarting. And Peter was explaining how they're doing on their farm and where they're at, and how many sheep they have, and what he's learned. It was just super helpful, and paid us a good price for the ram, by the way. And Peter, he turned to us, he said, you guys are where I was at 5 years ago. So you just kind of keep doing what you're doing, and you'll get there too. And after he left, I turned to Ira and I said, this is where we were 5 years ago too. So here we are, spinning our wheels. But Peter's been an amazing mentor. Ivor has been learning a lot directly from Peter. We've been out to his farm. We've seen how he does it. Your farm is over in, is it Lonsdale? Lonsdale. Over at Lonsdale. So he'll fill you in a little bit about that. But for this topic, Peter's on for 2 topics today. I told him his job is to keep talking until it stops raining. Because we're hoping to get outside and walk around a little bit and point out how we're doing with this guy. We've got the performer. The goal is to get you outside at some point and show you how we have the fence set up in the rotational grazing paddocks. So we're going to just keep going as best we can, and the weather will accommodate however it wants to. Even if Igress are out there in the rain, we point you all crowd around the windows and we'll point out where I'm grateful for this roof over on that thing, I say. It would be so, without further ado, everybody, let's welcome Peter Burkle. Hi. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. All right. I'll tell you, my wife and I have been talking about putting a metal roof on our house. This rain's making me rethink that a little bit. I don't know if we really hear each other. One other funny story, so they put up an ad for a ram, an adult ram actually, and they sold it like an hour before I called Rebecca actually, I think, and she said, well, we have one of his offspring, and I was looking for a cleanup ram. I had rams of my own, but I wanted some to come through, and just clean up anything that hadn't been bred, and told me her name and what was going on, and I just said, funny, I heard this, I was just listening to this podcast with a guy with the same name. He was talking about, these resilient trades that you could get into. She goes, yeah, that's my husband. And I had this picture of this guy who was like a philosophical mastermind. It turns out he lives 15 minutes from me and is a very down-to-earth, lovely guy. And we just hit it off, and I'm impressed with Rory's family. I remember Ivor, he was a little younger yet, and I said, well, what kind of a pocket knife? He goes, well, this is my main knife, and this is my backup knife. And I knew there was a good thing going on over here. Just a brief talk. There's 2 parts to this thing. I want to talk briefly about how to know what is good livestock, and what you should be looking for in the farmer you're buying from, the animals themselves, and how you go about raising them. And then I want to get into rotational grazing. There's many names for it. We'll talk about that, and the purpose behind it, what it looks like. And I did talk to Rory. If we get a break in the weather, we might run out there, move Ivor's sheep, and then I'll come in and tell you what we just saw. So it might be a little out of order. We're going to play it by ear. Okay, so in a very original fashion, we called our farm the Burkle Farm. It's my last name. It's easy to remember. It really should be called the Ziskowski Burkle Farm because I'm now partnered with my friend Doug over there, and we're farming on 2 different farms. We put them together, and we're going together. So a little bit of background. I'm actually from a big city in Illinois. If you can believe it, I lived in the suburbs outside of big cities my whole life. The first time I ever saw a cow was when I moved to Minnesota in high school. So I have no background in this. And so I came at it with a very fresh mind, and that's a double-edged sword. One is I had no preconceived notions in my head, and so I was open to different new ideas where, if you're raised on a farm, you kind of get locked into what your dad is doing. I'll just tell you that. I know a lot of farmers. It's true. And that's not a bad thing, by the way. Tradition is a lovely thing, but that helped. On the other hand, somebody will say something to me in the farming community, and then they look at me like I was stupid because it was assumed knowledge, right? It was something that, well, of course, everyone knows that. And I'd go, I don't even know the words you just said. Explain that to me. So this is actually a picture of me back when I had still no gray hair. When we got started, I was in my 20s. Going to the doctor didn't really help. The medicine, I couldn't focus at work. And so I just kind of decided to try to eat a little healthy, and I went and looked at like what organic chicken costs, and I go, I can't afford that. And I'm gonna do this way cheaper myself. So I was living in Mankato at the time. You can't have chickens in Mankato, so what did I do? I said, well, I'm gonna talk to all my neighbors, offer them a chicken, and raise 30 chickens in my backyard. Hope nobody notices. And so that's what I started doing. I learned how to butcher chickens by one of my dad's cousins who'd never butchered a chicken, but he hunted ducks, so he's like, well, I kind of just rip them apart. And I just got into it, And so that's probably like the motto of our farm is you just get going. You're never going to do it right the first time or even the second time. The starting is the thing. And so this is just from me. I had bought some chickens and I was putting them in a box to take them out to my family's, my cousin Dave's house where he was going to show me. And I mean, you guys did a chicken demonstration yesterday, right? And these Irish telling me they're doing it. It's all perfect. Dave, he was in his late 60s. He just grabbed like a bread knife and sawed the head off, and I was horrified. Because he was an old boy. He just like, this is how you kill him. And so that's how I got into it. And then I started reading more, and YouTube's been, obviously you get to watch people do it right. It's kind of a nice resource. And so then the next year I said, well, the neighbors were looking at me with a little perturbance because my backyard was full of feathers and blood when I did my second batch, and they were not thrilled about that. So I talked to my second cousin Dave, he's my dad's cousin, and he had bought some land, and I quote, so no one can live next to him. He was that, kind of a curmudgeon. And he was a lovely guy though, and he never said no to me. So I said, can I get some chickens? And he'd go, I don't know, can you? And we drive 20 minutes out there twice a day for 2 years. And we added bees, and I tried sheep and steer. And then, my wife and I were in this little house in Mankato, and I said, all right, I've been doing this 2 years. I'm not sick of it. I think this is what I want to do. And she was, I think, 7 months pregnant at the time. I go, let's start looking for a farm. She said, okay. And in her mind, she was thinking maybe like in a year or two. And I found a farm the next week, bought it, and we moved in a month. And I just started fencing, and off I went. I just started buying animals and just blowing my hair back, okay? So then we bought this farm, and when we looked at it in September, and this shows you a knowledge gap. Well, we know that late August, early September is when you do third cutting hay. We looked at it, and the grass was tall, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be able to feed my animals out here for a while. I only had like 100 square bales, and I was like, plenty. And we came back, and the farmer who had been renting the ground had cut all the hay down to nothing. And so I said, all right, well, I'm really hooped. And I went to the feed mill in Lonsdale, and I said, do you know a guy? You go in there, and Steve's running the feed mill, and he's like 70, older in the hills. No offense to anybody. I said, I need a guy to buy some hay from. And he goes, go to this guy. And that's how I met Doug, is from buying hay from him. So I was his customer for a little while, and then his helper, who was also like 70 at the time, he had knee surgery, so I'll help you. And we started working together, and then we went into business together. And so we went at this farm from 5 sheep. This is what I was talking to Rory, and a mangy old steer I bought for like $200 because he wasn't worth anything. He was bad. And now we're farming with rented ground about 200 acres plus or minus. We got a head of about 50 ewes. So we usually sell anywhere between 80 and 100 lambs a year, and we're in the middle of rebuilding a cattle herd. So right now we have about 25 head of cattle. We would have loved to have been here yesterday, but Doug and I were driving tractors while the sun was still shining from morning to night, trying to get the hay off the field. So that's why we're here today. This is perfect. In fact, I'll tell you what, we were having dinner last night. He goes, if it's raining or sunny tomorrow, I'm making hay. Like he wasn't going to come, so he's a true farmer. So that's where we are now. So what's our business? Our business is twofold. One is we direct sell meat to the consumer. We sell whole lambs, and we sell quarters, halves, and whole cattle to people primarily from the cities. And the reason we say primarily from the cities is because that's where people recognize quality and health, and they're more willing to pay for it. And the other part too is down here, everyone kind of knows a farmer, and you can't get the appropriate price to make your farm profitable. And so we market into the cities. And then on top of that, as I've been extremely strict, and Ivor, he's probably gonna roll his eyes because he says, I have this problem. I go, get rid of it. Whatever the animal, the problem. I've been extremely strict on my culling program, so that now I would, without bragging, I'd say top 10% Katahdins in this country. I started with really, really good stock from, maybe you guys heard of Greg Judy? No? Yeah? So I bought my first ram from him, and I bought really top-end Katahdin ewes from a fella in New Ulm that I knew, and I put that together, and then anything that was slightly wrong, I got rid of it. And so we also sell seed stock Katahdin ewes and rams, and then we sell South Pole cattle. So that's our business. I know that's a lot. I know I threw a lot at you, but I want to give you an idea of where I'm coming from. So when Rory asked me to talk at this conference, I think the first thing I said to him was, all right, I want to talk about cash flow in a farming business. He goes, no, don't do that. That's not what we're doing here. And part of that's just the how I'm wired. It's what I do for a living. Okay, but I do want to say this. Okay, as you'll hear me talk about money and sustainability, and I know that doesn't necessarily matter in the same way as a farm business as it does in a homestead, but you do have to make in my opinion, have to make your homestead break even. Okay. It's not sufficient, self-sufficient, Roy talked about that, if you're still having to pay from another job, okay? And that doesn't mean that you could make a lot of money. I don't know a ton of rich farmers out there, but it has to pay, okay? If you're working to run your homestead, that's not self-sufficient, that's not sustenance farming, right? That's what we used to call a small farm would be a sustenance farm, one that feeds your family, takes care of you. And so I'm of the opinion that you want to grow everything you can and sell enough that you can pay your taxes, pay your hay bill, whatever it is, and then still have enough to feed your family with really good food. Make sense? Yep. So that's my mindset as we go through some of this, is we can't ignore money, but I know it's not the main thrust of homesteading. And I will also say, when Ann and I were looking, we didn't plan to get into farming. We were looking for a 5 or 10 acre homestead, pretty much like this. And this farm came up, and as usual, I acted without thinking. And just went, let's go, and off we went. Okay.
How about the headaches?
Sorry?
What happened with your headaches?
Oh, yeah, so once I started growing my own food, I still get them occasionally. I'd say twice a year I get bad headaches, but it's not an everyday thing. So it was just the way I was eating, which was I was in my 20s, so it's like pizza and beer and chips. It's not the way to eat if you want long-term health. As my wife constantly reminds me when I eat chips. Okay, let's go. All right, so why do we farm this way? So first it's regenerative. You need to understand, and I can't talk to Montana or some of the other places, but even in the Midwest, which is the most fertile soil on the planet, okay? We have been in a state of negative flow, meaning we have been taking off the land and not returning for the last 160 to 175 years. And it's only accelerated with the advent of mechanized farming, which is like tractors and that sort of thing, because they've allowed us to push deeper, harder, and faster in a way that the land is not designed to support. So there's a really interesting story from the 1880s. They dug a hole, this was in Iowa, okay, so we're close. They dug a hole and they found 8 foot of topsoil, the black Cape-like dirt. okay? And through the way we've been farming, it's now about a foot or less, okay? And that's been done in the last 150 years. So one of the primary thrusts of the way that Doug and I farm is to take what we did, not out of malice, but out of ignorance, I would say, and we want to start rebuilding it, okay? We want to see that land grow up, because it doesn't go down, it actually adds on top. And so this way of farming does that, okay? It does it in a way that is good for the earth. It's really good. So this way of farming, even if something goes sideways, you don't have your pocketbook on the line. Does that make sense? I run the grazing side of things, so that's cattle and the sheep, off of a Honda 4-wheeler that I bought, I don't know how many years ago, okay? All you need is a little bit of this electric rope that I brought one in, some posts, and you can technically walk it. I do the 4-wheeler because I'm in a hurry all the time. So that goes back to low infrastructure. We have some sheds and some barns from on Doug's farm, because his family he's like a 5th generation dairyman, okay? So there's some buildings there, but buildings are prohibitively expensive in 2 ways. One is they do cost a lot, and also that ties your money up in a way that you can't change. You can't change your mind once that building's made, right? They're not gonna take it back, you know? And so it takes away your flexibility when you invest your money into buildings instead of investing in animals. Because animals are what is that's your money, right? That's your food, that's your everything, okay? And doing it this way is something you can do over and over, whether it's hot or cold. If you have too much rain, too little rain, this is something that you can modulate and pulse back and forth. When it's too hot and it's dry and you don't have enough grass, sell some animals. When it's like last year, when it was wet and or even this year, we have grass growing out of our ears, we could buy more animals and then you sell them, right? So you can pulse and modulate the way that you manage your farm with this method of farming. Okay, so again, I'm kind of getting philosophical here, but these are the underpinnings that help you understand why I'm going to say this is the right kind of animal, this is something you want to avoid, and that sort of thing. I do want to say I meant to do this right away. I really do build up a head of steam. If you have a question or you hear me say something that you go like, what was that? Just throw your hand up. I'll stop anytime, okay? Sorry, okay. Thought I got one already. All right. Okay. So when we're choosing animals, these are principles that have to apply. They must be cost neutral animals. And what I mean by that is that you have to break even on the animal. So an animal that is getting sick constantly, that needs a vet, is gonna run your pocketbook down, okay? An animal that has been bred in a way that you have to give it supplemental feed, like corn or sweet feed. A horse is a good example of like the premium example of this. That horse makes you no money, but it sure costs a lot of money in vet and feed and buildings, right? So I would not recommend a horse unless you are doing very well. The second one, and this is just as important, I would say, you have to enjoy raising this animal. When you are out, I don't know, I can't speak to any people from the South, but I go out, whether it's 100 or minus 30, and you still kind of have to like it, okay? It has to be something that you find fulfilling. And rabbits. I remember Ivor talking to me about rabbits. I hear the systems and the intricacies of that, and I go, oh, never, not for me. It's like goats. I'll never have a goat on my farm. I mean, I told my son Henry, you can get goats when I'm dead. Good luck. You know, it's just not for me. I'm not saying don't get goats, by the way. I'm just saying you have to enjoy raising it, okay? And this is very important. It has to be family friendly. Most of us here are family people, whether it's direct kids on the homestead or the farm or your grandkids or whatever it is. You can't have dangerous animals out there, just flat out. I got a real bargain on an Angus steer one time, and he wasn't even necessarily going after people, but he was unpredictable, and he would run and he would jump fence. We got rid of him like that. We just turned him into hamburger. He wasn't even full grown. We just went, you're gone. Because I have kids going from, late teens to 4 years old, I have a 12-year-old that's by my side every day farming. I can't have animals that are gonna be a danger to my family. And you should not tolerate that at all. There's plenty of animals out there that are, I mean, yesterday Henry and I moved the whole cattle herd by just walking behind them, and that included a bull. And you just snap your fingers and say, hey, let's go. And they will walk exactly where you need them if you get the right animals. There's a YouTube video of Greg Judy. He had a conference. I wasn't there, but I had a friend that was there. He stocked his animals at 1 million pounds an acre, which means 300 head of cattle was in about a half an acre, okay? And he walked 30 strangers into that group of animals with no problem because he doesn't tolerate high-headed animals, okay? So be very strict about that, even for yourself. I've been accidentally stepped on by my wife's milk cow, which is like a small animal. Even that, where she just stepped on me and got off, I was limping for all day, all right? They're big animals, even sheep. I've been knocked over by a ram, guess what? Out the door. Because it's funny when he does it to me and it's snow, so I'm like falling into a foot of snow, and that's fine. But what if he did that to a 12-year-old on hard ground, right? So it has to be family friendly when you're selecting animals. If the person you're buying them from doesn't want you to go out in the field, no. Just that's someone who doesn't trust their animals, and nor should you. Is that fair? No. Okay. This might seem pretty practical, but I'm just taking it from a rudimentary standpoint. All right, so some general principles. I cannot stress this enough. Do not buy animals from an auction barn. And there's a couple of reasons. The temptation is they are cheap. I sell my ewes for breeding stock for about $500 a head. You can get a Katahdin ewe at the auction barn for depending on the time of the year, for as low as $75. Big difference, right? And you go, oh, I can get so many. That you will bring unknown genetics with all sorts of problems that come with it, disease, and they probably do not come out of a farm that's farming the way that you want to do it, meaning rotational grazing, grass only. So you will have all sorts, a myriad of problems. They could also not be from your area. I'll talk about this later, but it is common to have deep health problems when you pull animals that haven't grown up in the area you're from, okay? So I do not recommend that. Do not buy from an auction barn. What you will end up doing, if you buy 10 animals, you will keep one of them. And you will have frustration and heartache and bills of trying to keep them alive and then reselling them, or trying to eat them, or find a home for them, for that one that you kept. Okay. Buy your animals from someone that farms the way you want to farm. Tell a little story here. So we sell, one of our income streams is selling lamb as meat. And so Doug and I tossed around the idea, and it was mostly me, I won't even throw him under the bus here. I wanted to cross a subset of my Katahdin ewes with a Dorper ram to get a larger leg of lamb, essentially. And so I went out and I found I was in a hurry. By the way, every mistake I tell you, it's because I was in a hurry. And we went over and we bought a beautiful, beautiful ram. I mean, they were big and docile, and they were eating sweet feed out of corn. They were eating pellets. They were eating hay. They were everything, right? And they looked so good. That ram died by December because he could not make a living off of grass and hay. He was simply not bred to be healthy without all that additional supplement. And I don't have that. I don't have the infrastructure for it. And so he looked a little thinner, and then one day I went out there and he was just, and so that was a big investment to get a registered Dorper that he bred precisely for ewes. Because my Katahdin rams, who were built for the environment, just bullied the heck out of him. I mean, so he didn't do anything. I mean, and so that's what I'm saying. If they're not farming the way you want to farm, the animals probably won't do well, okay? Small animals are really, really good. I know, and I'm not talking about the dwarf animals or that genetic stuff. I'm saying smaller animals tend to thrive in a environment where you're asking more of them, is a bigger animal is gonna have a harder time growing in a grass-only environment. They're gonna be slower growing, they're not gonna finish as well. And in the end, they're not going to be a sustainable choice for you. And I'm gonna get into a couple of case studies with cattle where we're gonna look at some dairy cattle versus some beef cattle that we have, so you guys can see the difference visually. And this is, the fourth one is an important one. Don't buy things that you don't wanna eat. Like, it sounds cool to have an ostrich, but I don't wanna eat one. And if no one wants to buy my ostrich, I'm either gonna feed it for nothing or I gotta eat it. And I don't wanna eat one, so we're not gonna raise ostriches. I'm not particularly excited about eating bison either. They kind of scare me anyway. But I'm just saying, don't buy things that you can't sell them. And I know the goal is not to sell everything, right? But you have to want to eat it if you're raising it, because it costs you money and time. Any questions on any of this? We'll get into some more detail. Okay. So this is a classic Jersey. I'd probably say it's a heifer based on the udder. The udder's pretty small yet. This is a Jersey heifer. What do you guys notice? This is gonna be a little participatory part. If you guys look at the shape, not you, Henry, you know the answer. Like, I'm surprised my kids are paying attention. I talk about this stuff all the time. Usually I get going and they start trying to get out of the room like this, you know? Good job, Henry. Anybody else? What do you guys notice about this animal from a body conformation? It means, yeah.
The hind legs are huge.
Yep, very tall animal, right? All right, Ivor?
Bony.
Yeah, you guys see the hip bones and the back, right? Okay, so this is, why do you guys think this is the way it is? Anybody?
Bred that way.
Yeah, it's been bred that way. And the reason why is because this is a production animal, okay? And so what I mean by that is they've been designed to, I think, I don't know the number for a whole Jersey, but a Holstein should be giving, in a full production with silage feed and everything, 10 to 11 gallons a day. Okay? And so, I have all these facts because my partner's old ex-dairy farmers. I have all them. So they're bred to be a race car. This is a race car, okay? It needs race fuel. So if you put in diesel, which is like made out of grass, it's gonna just crash, okay? So my wife has a dairy cow, so you say, because part of homesteading, you go, I want a dairy cow. Milk, butter, cheese, right? We bought a cross. It was crossed with a beef cow, because we don't need, Jersey's probably what, Doug, 7 or 8 gallons a day? Who needs 7 gallons of milk a day? Even if you want to do butter and cheese, come on, that's a nuts amount of, And so we said, well, we don't need all that milk. We're going to trade for durability, the ability to raise a calf, and give us some milk. And so we have a Jersey cross with a Red Devon we just found on a local farm near us. That's a wise decision, because this animal is a race car. And unless you're a race car driver, you don't need a race car. I want the car that's going to go 100,000 more miles than this one will. The average dairy, does anybody know how long an average dairy cow lives on a production farm? Anybody? I know Doug knows, you can't answer. 4 or 5 years. Okay? Do you know how long a beef cattle raised properly should live? Upwards of 20 years. Okay? Which one do you want? The one that's going to give you 18 calves or 3?
Are they just retiring them after 5 years, or are they dying?
They're worn out.
They won't produce anymore?
It's a race car.
Yeah.
You can't rebuild the engine on an animal. And so it just gets worn out. When you ask a lot out of an animal and you're giving it the fuel to do it, it's like, yeah. So the feed requirements on this are not sustainable, I think, in a homestead setting, unless you're going to be buying bagged feed. Okay? The hay requirements. This is not an animal that can eat rough hay. Okay, and what I mean by that is maybe first cutting hay that's gone to seed, that's not perfect like alfalfa, right? This is more like a horse. You got to feed it the perfection hay, and maybe a little on top of that with some grain, okay? That's just the way they're bred. It's not this cow's fault, it's just the way they're bred. And they are meant for a barn. So who wants to spend 100 grand on a barn if there's not one on your, okay? You want animals that can live outside comfortably in the environment that you're in. My sheep and my cattle have never seen the inside of a building. I don't even have one on my farm. I have my house. So like, I remember one time we had to bring a calf inside in the winter and it just was hanging out next to my truck in the garage. And I tied it to the side view mirror. That's not ideal though, you know what I mean? So this is something that I would say, and you can find this in beef cattle too, by the way. It's just more obvious in a dairy animal. The mainstream animals have been bred to be race cars. The idea of having a 1,400 pound Angus steer should be off the table. Because not only are they not going to finish in a timely fashion for you to eat, but they're going to damage your soil, your ground. When you put a hoof on a 1,400 pound animal in wet ground, it's going to put a hole 6 inches deep in your ground. And that does not heal in even several years. Ask me how I know. I made all these mistakes, by the way. This isn't like I'm a font of wisdom here. So, any questions about this, and then we'll look at something more desirable.
What is the main detriment to animal health or to animal height? I know you talked about
Yeah.
it, but like, what's the reason for tall animals versus?
Yeah. So, I'm sure you guys have observed that people that were born in the 20s and 30s tended to be small, shorter people, right? We've gotten taller as the generations have gone along. That has to do with the availability of food. Now, if you took someone like Ivor or me, who are kind of tall stringings, or even Rory, and you just said, I need you to live on 1,200 calories a day. Maybe not though, right? People were small because they were living on less, and so smaller animals can handle living on grass and hay without anything extra, okay? And so it's just an epigenetic expression of the durability of an animal, okay? And I'll get into what that means in a minute. That's a good question. Any other questions? Okay. Anything confusing so far? I'm trying to be focused. Okay. All right. I just took this picture this spring. This is one of our cows. I picked this one because this is a British white, but everyone thinks it's a Holsteiner or something like that. This is a beef animal. Can you guys see the difference? Look how short her leg is. Her body is taller than her leg, okay? This is an expression of durability. If you think about how a cow digests its food, does anybody know? You guys know what a rumen is? A rumen is just a giant pickling tank, okay? So if the bigger the tank, the more it can go. And the more it can go, the more it can process grass efficiently. And so this calf right now is about 700 pounds, maybe 600, something like that, okay? In a few months. Because that cow is going to carry that calf, give it milk, keep her condition like this. She's not any skinnier than this. All on grass with no supplement, okay? And by the way, she's going to carry that calf until she has a calf next year. We don't wean them off. We let the cow do its thing. Yep. You want cows that can do this. And so we have a bunch of different breeds of cows. We have some Red Angus. We're buying more South Pole. We have some British Whites. But there's no cow on our farm that can't do this, okay? Your cow is an employee. She has to take what you give her, which is grass and hay. You don't want to starve them, I'm not saying that. Raise a calf without getting skinny, okay? So look at the size of the hindquarter. Oh, poor guy got hurt. I don't know. If you look at the brisket here, you see that wrinkle in her tail? Okay, I'm gonna go back. Let's look at it on the, well, not really. There's a bone there. Okay, that's fat. Yeah, as long as she breeds back, we're gonna keep her on the farm. So that cow gave him 20 calves. Our oldest animal is getting near 10, but again, a lot of it has to do with that we were buying mid-range mature cattle, and we've only been at the cattle thing for a few years. So I guess I'll let you guys know in a few years. Okay. So the good management I'm talking to you about, and the right animals gives you this. This is lamb chops on grass alone. Okay? This is just by the way, you can tell, this is just on my kitchen counter. This isn't like a stock photo. That is chuck roast from a grass-fed animal. That's not a steak, that's not ribeye, that's a chuck roast.
Wow.
Okay? That was, Ann was cutting it up and I said, to make soup or something, and I said, I want to get a picture of that. That's marbling and a chuck roast off of grass alone, all right? Yeah.
I hear, because I've never actually tasted just pure grass beef, a lot of the complaints I hear about it is taste more gamey. Is that true?
I would say, to me, the taste is more minerally. I don't think it's gamey like a deer is. A lot of the gamey flavor, talking to my butcher, is when guys don't clean them right or they shoot them in the guts. It does taste different. I remember when Doug and I were first working together and he was just finishing out steers and he still had silage, so they were getting some grain. And we said, I was telling him and he was like, oh, grass-fed beef, I heard it tastes like shoe leather. And I was in the middle of evangelizing him, much like I'm doing all of you guys right here. And so we said, let's have a contest. Why don't you bring one of your ribeyes over? I'll get a steak out of the freezer, we'll do them both. We'll bring some of your fellas, your friends around, we'll have a little contest. And I will tell you, I love a corn-fed steak. It just tastes so good. It does. But I've learned, forgive me, your wife's name? Sorry, I can't remember. Where are you? Sourdough. What's her name?
Leisha.
Leisha. I'm so rude. I'm so rude. Leisha was talking about changing your palate.
Yeah.
So as I haven't had corn-fed beef in years now, and Ann and I went out to eat, and we're just like, this is awful. It coats your mouth. It's just a palate that you get used to it. And it's more minerally to me, not gamey in the way that like a badly shot deer or something. Yep, so we butcher on a flush, right? So there's a spring flush of grass, and then there's a fall flush of grass, and that's basically when the rain is. And so you always want to catch them on a gain, because when they're being pulled down by low, maybe the grass is old because you've been holding it for the dry time or something like that, you will taste the difference, and it'll also just be tougher. So if you want tender, really good meat, we tend to butcher everything in September, because that's about the 2-year mark and a little bit. We get them on the fall flush of grass when they're gaining and moving forward, and then you end up with meat like that. Okay. And then I'll talk more about flavor of lamb if you don't mind. I'm going to tell a story. So Ann's father is he's 85 years old, and he's from the Dakotas. He's what I would call a cowboy preacher, meaning he would preach to a bunch of small towns that couldn't do their own pastor, and they would help out on ranches. And he told me one time, Ann made, I think it was shepherd's pie. And he goes, I don't want to eat that. Because he had a bad experience with a sheep that somebody had given him. And he said it tasted like rotten grease, basically. It coated his mouth, tasted like rotten grease. And I said, you haven't had lamb like this. And Ann kind of strong-armed him, got him to eat it, and he ended up having thirds, okay? The way you raise an animal will impact its taste. There's just no doubt about it. One of the reasons and I'll get into this a little bit too, I choose Katahdins and hair sheep in particular, is they have less lanolin in their skin from not having wool. And that does affect the flavor too. Grass-fed hair sheep ask anybody who's had it, is sweet. It's almost like beef, but a little sweeter is probably the easiest way to say it. It should not taste bad. If you bought it from somebody and it tastes poor, it was raised poorly. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. And I don't want to throw anybody shade or something like that, but it's just the fact of the matter. Okay. So if you want to eat that, which I do, good management gets you that, okay? And the right animals that will respond to that management. Let's talk about sheep. We were just talking about sheep. I got ahead of myself. Okay. So I recommend hair sheep. I was doing my research on this, and I always begin with the end in mind. It's just like a planning thing. I do project management for my day job, and so I always begin with the end in mind. And the end for me is when I'm 65 or 70, and I thought, I don't want to be shearing sheep or trimming hooves or fighting. You hear these stories about these sheep that are just absolutely brainless, and they just go. I want something that's going to make it easy for my old self to keep farming, okay? And so that's where I landed on hair sheep Katahdins, and I actually have mine are Katahdin with a little dash of St. Croix. People go, is that purebred or not? I say yes, it is, because Katahdin is a cross. It's a composite breed that includes St. Croix already. All I did was bring some of the St. Croix traits forward a little more. That's super in the weeds. You want to talk about that one-on-one? I will put you to sleep, I promise. All right, this is what I was talking about. Hair sheep taste better, okay? It's an issue of lanolin. Wool generates extra lanolin. That affects the flavor, okay? Our pastor is English. He loves the nasty taste of that lanolin. He grew up eating gray old mutton. More power to him. We're American. If you want to be able to get people to take your sheep, it's got to taste good. You know, sheep is not on the average American's menu. It's not on their palate, and so it's something you got to teach. If you're selling a few to pay for the other ones or something like that. They're smart. They're easy to break the hot wire. Okay. The reason why they're easy to break the hot wire is they have less of an insulating coat on them than a wool sheep. So they will not take a shock as well as a wool sheep with a big mat on them, okay? So they feel that. We've been sitting up in the farmyard, there's a field, and then they've been up on a field on a hill, and I've heard a lamb get snapped by the fence from 200 yards away. They'll learn, okay? So our sheep, I don't know if you see this picture, this is my son Henry, he's moving fence. Our sheep stand on one wire, a foot off the ground. And not that we don't have some get out from time to time, but you know what you do? You eat those. They tell you they don't want to work for you. You eat them. You know? That's what I told Ivor. I said, they're going to let you know if they don't want to work for you. And you just eat them. That's why you got to keep animals you want to eat, because there will be naughty ones, and you just eat them. It's good. The other thing is, Katahdin is now, this has changed in the past years, now the most readily available breed of sheep in the U.S. The wool ones are now in the minority, okay? So this is a sheep that's easy to find, it's easy to keep, and it will break the hot wire. And so if I had to trim, hoof, or shear sheep, I just wouldn't have them. If I had to string up enough nets to carry my sheep on daily moves, I just wouldn't have them. This is to make it, if we go back to first principles, it's supposed to be fun. If it's not fun, you'll quit. I mean, let's just call it what it is. If you're not having any fun at all, you're not going to keep doing it. It doesn't mean it has to be fun all the time, but it has to be fun some of the time. So that's why I recommend hair sheep. I actually just took this picture when we were up in the Northfield, Henry. A week and a half ago.
A week ago?
Yeah, so if you look, this is what the management does. You can barely see those sheep. They're wading through grass as tall as they are. And they're getting as much as they want to eat. They're not denied anything, okay? And that's how you get those lamb chops that look so good. You have to give them as much as they want to eat. You have to give them a low stress environment, and daily moves is good for the ground and the animal. We'll talk more about daily moves and why it's important, particularly with sheep, in the second half. What am I doing on time already?
You're fine. We're still in the
Okay, cool. Okay.
But we can also bleed this into.
This is I think the last slide for this one, and then we should be right on time. We'll do a Q&A.
Great.
All right, these are some considerations, and I'll tell you these come from doing everything I'm saying. Don't do this. I did it. Okay. So just so you understand, avoid heritage breeds for the sake of being heritage. Okay. Everyone likes coonies. They take a year to finish. You can get heritage breeds like Ann and I are going to pick up some red wattles. They'll finish in 5 months. You can still get clean heritage animals, but the main problem with these are some of the examples, okay, is that if you don't have them on the right timeline, they cost you money instead of making money, okay? Highlands. I had beautiful Highlands. We still have pictures of them up all over the house. I love them. They're really smart. They were insanely tough. It took 3 years to finish a Highland. So that's 3 years of feeding hay. So that 2 years, you can kind of do that. That's what we do. And then make, it pencils out. 3 years, you're underwater on the animal, okay? And again, going back to first principles, it can't cost you money. It has to at least break you even, okay? So I've never had Icelandics, but I have people I know who have had them. They finish at 60 pounds. which means you're gonna get 25 pounds of meat off of it.
These are the sheep.
Those are those really hairy,
Yeah.
they're very durable. All these animals are very durable, okay? And that's the attraction of them, is that they're unique looking, they're interesting, they're durable. But you can't, I mean, the chop on a lamb that size is gonna be about the size of a Ford, okay? Which is great if you are willing to eat 12 lamb chops for dinner. But come on now, what are we talking about here? You know? And so that's important. I gotta amend this, okay? Buying local is the move, okay? I bought from different places, it's always bit me, okay? Epigenetics are real. This is why we're talking about this. When an animal is born and bred in a certain environment and you take it into a new environment, it's not gonna do what you want it to do. And so this really, parasite resistant isn't really north to south, it's really humid to dry. You can put animals from our area into Montana, our Montana people. I don't know, I just gestured at you, I'm sorry. I just guessed. But if you bring a dry animal from a dry environment into a wet one, like Minnesota, Missouri, you know, these hot, humid environments, they will not make it, okay? Because the genetics that have been expressed in that animal from its mother and its environment that it was started in are not the same as the ones that would be expressed, even in the same breed, in your local area, okay? So I pretty much, having made all these mistakes, if I want more animals, this is what I'll do. If I need more sheep, I'll buy from 2 people in Minnesota, and hopefully these guys will go and I'll buy from them because they're closer yet, okay? My point is that it will always pay you back if you spend a little more and get the exact right, perfect animal, than if you buy two of them instead that aren't right and you have to get rid of them, okay? So, for homesteading, I just spent all this time talking to you about my ewes and my rams and my cows and my bull, right? If you're on limited acres, get castrated animals. So steers, wethers, barrows. So that's cattle, sheep, pigs, okay? The reason why is you're trying to feed yourselves and maybe make a few bucks on the side to pay your taxes or, you know, the hay that you need in the winter or whatever that is. Keeping breeding stock over winter is expensive, all right? It's an issue of economies of scale. So Rory was really generous. Remember, he was telling me how we met? He was very nice. That's not how that happened. I said, I just met him and I go, let me tell you everything you're doing wrong. And I got a little hyped up, but one of the things I told him, I said, you're on limited acres, why are you making hay? Okay, sell all that hay equipment and you have money for 10 years of hay. And then you can have more sheep too. Okay, if you're on limited acres, which is what I'm assuming we're all looking at for homesteading, get animals that you can get in, get out, and feed your family. If a cow dies, instead of giving you a calf, you just lost thousands of dollars in feed, hay, and time, okay? Does that make sense? When we buy pigs, because we're not a pig operation, we just buy pigs to put in our freezer. We buy barrows. We just buy castrated male pigs. They're gonna be here from July to December, then go to the butcher, and we're out of there, right? Because that's really what we're talking about, is feeding our family with really healthy food. So, the romance of having a bull and a cow and making your own calves, and that's a perfect circle of life, it's true. You are more sustainable in one way, but then you gotta find the time, money, to generate the money to feed those animals to give you that one calf. Can I tell them how you do breeding? So one of the things when I was going through with Ivor and Rory, and they have, what do you guys have out here, like 10 sheep? I said, you should not have a ram. And they bring their sheep over to my farm for a month, and my rams breed them. Because it makes sense for me to have a ram with the amount of ewes I have. And they're getting close. I said maybe 10 or 15 is maybe when you can make sense to have a ram. Because guess what? That ram's gonna breed for 1 month, and then you gotta feed him for 11 more. He did his job in 1 month, and you gotta feed him for 11 more. And a bull is even crazier. You know how much a bull eats? It's crazy. And so you have to just be, and I'm telling you, as someone who's fallen prey to this, is to not fall prey to the romance of like a completely closed loop, right? Where you go, I've closed my loop, I got everything. Instead, you need to build relationships. If you have a few ewes, find somebody like me in your area and say, can I just drop them off? And so Rory and Ivor pay me for the hay their sheep eat while they're at my place for a month. This is way cheaper than having a random all year, okay? We didn't have a bull until we had 15 cows. We were gonna do AI, okay? And there's a spot where that flips and that works, okay? But and that's if you're dead set on it. So this is even further down the way. If you wanna eat beef, get a steer. It'll just live there until it's fat and then you eat it. It's super easy. Does that make sense? I know. I think I just ruined a few of your plans just looking at your faces.
I think you do those things, but just delay that.
Yeah.
That romantic part of it, until you know what you're doing.
100%. So here's what happened when I bought my Highlands. And I see, God love my wife, she never tells me no or like slow down. Sometimes if you have two people that hit the gas, sometimes it works and sometimes we go, what did we do? We ended up selling all our Highlands at a loss. Because it's broader than that, but I basically went out and bought like Noah. I was like, Noah, I bought like 2 of everything. I'm like, let's see what happens. And I just realized I couldn't be good at it this way. And so I sold everything but my sheep. Because I looked at it and I said, sheep is the one that I think we like to eat them and I can make money. I can do this really well. And then after I got masterful at sheep, then we moved into cow. I think Rory's point is good. Become the master of the thing that you want to do and then broaden from there. In the second half of the thing, I'll talk to you about if you want to expand, like how to go about doing that. There's really smart ways to do that without outlaying millions of dollars that we know land costs now. I've even said before, if I could do it all over again, I probably would have bought less land and rented a lot more, okay? And I'll go into some examples of that. Okay, I think we can hit a break. We're in some decent weather. Why don't we watch Ivor move his sheep? And then we'll come.
You did it.
I kept going. I blacked out for the last hour. I don't know what I said. Let's go watch Ivor move his sheep, and then we'll come back and talk about what we saw.